Are we? Excellent. Thanks, Jennifer. Thank you. I was going to do com check. While you, Glenn. Hopefully you can all see the screen. Excellent. Thanks, Dale. Okie dokie. 8:30 on the dot. I think we should make a start and people can catch up. We've got 20 odd people on board. Seems like yesterday we were here talking about what we'd done previously. 2 weeks has gone exceptionally fast. They say that's what happens when you're having fun. I think we need to redefine fun, but you know, it's all good stuff. Okie dokie. So what we're going to go through today, it'll be a whirlwind trip. We've done a whole heck of a lot of work in the background and got a lot of supporting evidence. I won't go through a whole heap of that supporting evidence just at the moment, but I will give you a bit of a flavour where we got to with the current state analysis. So thank you very much for all those people who are able to participate in that and provide your input. It was very, very valuable, and I'll give us some sort of a bit of a summary as to what we gleaned out of that feedback. Then we'll go into where the proposed QGEA is starting to frame up as an architectural ecosystem. And I think that's the key thing. It isn't just one component or one framework. It's a number of things that need to combine together to assist all of us, depending upon where we are in our architectural journeys, what our business needs are, and what we need to get out of QGEA moving forward. And I think you'll see where we got to there. And then the framework, how we're thinking about the framework and how it's starting to shape up and what we think would be valuable for you folk looking at it, and then have a look at the fortnight ahead. So weeks 5 and 6. So this is where we are, right smack bang in the middle. So we're getting right into the meaty stuff at the moment. So starting to define that QGEA framework, having a look at, you know, the common domain, services, platforms, all that sort of stuff. And then ahead of us, we've got some more of the detailed artifacts and the roadmap of how we put some meat on it. And I think the key thing here is to mention is, you know, this is a framework. It's not meant to be the be all and end all. It is something that we can all use depending upon how our agency views architecture and our level of maturity in our architectural journeys, that we can start hanging some stuff on. And with any luck and with your input, what we're developing enables you to utilize this in your journeys of maturity, and it also enables us to start talking a common language across government, so we can sort of join up a whole heap of stuff. We can overlay different agencies, architecture, and you know, get some of that goodness out of it that we've all been talking about. So the current state analysis. As I mentioned, we did speak to quite a few of you at a more technical level about some of the challenges that you were facing, and those challenges, when we aggregated all of that together, it really came into you know, some of the core areas of coverage. So what you were telling us was that there was a greater emphasis on technology rather than business, and what we're now starting to find is our business people are becoming more savvy in the technology space, and we need to have those business conversations more so than our technical conversation, and that there were you'd like to see a lot more views on our long-term whole of government direction, so that you can actually line up your agency's journeys with where we're wanting to head as Queensland government. The other area was around the purpose and the structure. So, you know, being able to understand and see what each other are doing. So it's sort of almost that sort of central point that people can put in, you know, lessons learned and case studies and leverage each other, and we sort of facilitate the sharing of that good architectural practice and things that we've been learning in individual agencies as individual agencies go on their journeys for the benefit of everyone else. And there was a perception that whilst everyone acknowledged the need for reporting, it was about, so what? So we've reported all of that in, all of this information in. What's that telling central government? Is it affecting the direction? What's the benefit that's coming back out of the effort and the work that you put in identifying and reporting back into us as an agency in the profiling standard and those sort of things? So making sure that we turn that around and give value back out of all of that information and make it accessible and useful for you guys. And finally, it was around accuracy and relevance. So making sure that in some cases they're, and it varied depending upon the agency, it's that balance between how specific we got and prescriptive versus how abstract we were from either both a policy or a classification framework. So some of you were saying, oh, we'd like some more specificity in the classification frameworks and get a little bit more granular. And others were saying, oh, it's a bit too granular for us. We need to sort of abstract it a little bit more because, there's some nuances that don't really fit. So that's going to be a careful balance for us. I don't know whether it's going to be perfect, but hopefully what we'll be able to do is something that meets that balance. So out of all of that feedback, 4 key things that we're having a look at focusing on. QGEA has to clearly link strategy to decisions. So all the way from the business all the way through to the technology stack, even going higher with the strategy and the policy, legislation and all the rest of it. So having that clear link all the way through. We need to be able to facilitate that cross-agency collaboration. And this will be an interesting one, which I'll bounce off you folk. Number 3 is around shifting our focus at the moment from how. That's not to say that we're not going to have how in there, which is around the technologies and the policies and all the rest of it, but really shifting that from all of that prescriptive technology level stuff into the why. So changing it so that we've got some, the business, the strategy, the value that architecture can play in the business area as a guiding sort of framework. And finally, basically making sure that what we've got in the QGEA equips agencies, you folk, with the practical tools to make some real enterprise architecture type decisions. So hopefully we've got that, and certainly I'm sure thus far you've been very open and frank and free with your feedback and input, which we really, really do value and appreciate. So keep that coming. So QGEA as the ecosystem. So what does the ecosystem sort of look like? So what we've put into the ecosystem, so you would have all seen in Showcase 1, where we had the design principles that we came up with and the vision. In Showcase 2, around what QGEA needs to present and how we need to build that. We have had a look at digital government approaches, both in national jurisdiction, other national jurisdictions within Australia, as well as internationally, and had a look at what leading digital government jurisdictions have as or have done as part of their practices. And that's closely aligned with the third element there, which is the cornerstone. So what we've done is had a look at what everyone's doing. And then we would have seen in Showcase 2 the 5 cornerstones that we've been able to distill out of all of those case studies as being the critical elements that we need from a foundation perspective to enable digital government. And there's sort of the core focus areas that we'll need to work towards. And then obviously our current state analysis, which you would have seen just before in the previous slide, around those challenges that you folk are experiencing on a day-to-day basis in delivering EA practice within your organisations. And then what we've also done is had a look across what contemporary EA practices are like, not only in government, but in the private sector as well. And had a look at some of those trends there. And they've all fed into where we've sort of landed at this stage with the QGEA ecosystem. And this is a bit of an overview of it. And I think the diagram really speaks to the fact that, you know, in the center of it, we've got the QGEA framework, which is really the toolbox, the core functions, the strategic choice cascade, and the framework domains, which I'll get into in a little bit later when we talk about that. But fair to say what the diagram's sort of representing is that the framework in and of itself can't actually do it all. So around the outside, what we've got is some of these supporting things that need to exist to help the QGEA framework. And depending upon what you need from an agency perspective, you may need to pick and choose some of the elements from different boxes to deliver. So, you know, things like the mission and value, you know, why does the QGEA exist, and what is our value proposition to agencies and government? The future state blueprint. So what is the North Star that we want to head to as a government to help guide some of the decisions that you folk make at an agency level? And that might be at a whole of government collective, or it may be in a specific domain around I don't know, a digital workspace or something like that for Queensland government staff. So it's around being able to set those future state blueprints so that we've got a target to aim for. Now, that's not to say that once we set the blueprint, that we expect everyone to get there in 12 or 18 months. You know, it could be a 5 to 10 year journey for some agencies, just depending upon what their life cycle plans look like, what their funding and their resourcing profile looks like. But what it does do is it sets some sort of goal that you guys can start aligning to and moving the organisation to. And that'll be both a business and a technology side. Now, obviously, evolution and continuous improvement, feedback, new things that come through, emerging technologies, all of those sort of things need to go into the QGEA framework, and it needs to evolve with us as we evolve and our maturity improves as a collective. Applied scenarios. So this was something that came out in the current state analysis. Really is both a guidebook for how to use the framework and the supporting components, but also having those applied scenarios where agencies have taken some of this sort of stuff and actually got some really valuable lessons or done some really good work. And it's about having a place within the framework to be able to showcase some of that so that we can share the learnings, we can share the good work, and you know, people get a bit of kudos for doing the good work, which is always nice. But more than that, just everyone knows what's going on, and you know, if we don't have to reinvent the wheel, why should we? Roles and responsibilities is an obvious one, and that will include some of the governance components and obviously the whole of government collaboration and how we can support agencies, how we can support each other moving forward. So that's the basis of the ecosystem itself. So what is it going to look like? So where we're landing at the moment is that there's sort of three core components around and that make up the framework. So the first area there, and it's something that came through very, very strongly at both the CIO discussions that we had in the first couple of weeks and with practitioners in the current state analysis, was we need that common language, and in particular the common language at a business level. So the technology stuff was less so, but what everyone was telling us was, yeah, we need to get common across what are the business functions and the sectors within government. So at least, you know, it might not be perfect, but we're all talking the same thing when we say X. The second element is a simplified strategic planning model. So, you know, how can we help the business understand EA and where it fits and how it can assist the business in their strategic planning and in trying to achieve their objectives. So really elevating the ability for QGEA or for EA to assist the business in delivering their business outcomes, not just the technology side of things. And then finally, where most of us practice on a day-to-day basis is really that framework domain. So really looking at the business and the technology architectures and getting into the nuts and bolts of, the resources, the policies, the directives, the taxonomies, artifacts, all of that sort of day-to-day stuff. And so those three elements working in concert make up the QGEA framework itself. So when we have a look at the proposed, so the core government functions and sectors, if I've missed anything, yell out or send us an email or in the chat or something like that. This is just, at the moment, a bit of a first cut. So you've got, what we think 5 core government functions. We deliver services, we make policy and make decisions. We write policy and make decisions. We have operational functions that we do. We tend to do a lot of regulation and enforcement. And then we also have a workforce that we need to look after. And then underneath that, and this is not trying to be cover 100%, but it's to give a bit of a flavour. Under service delivery, we engage with citizens, we have field operations, and we do service type activities, policy, we do policy analysis, implementation, we do financial assistance, and in the operations, asset management, revenue collection, project management, we do a whole heap of stuff there. Regulation, there's compliance, there's assessments, there's registration and licensing across a number of agencies, and then the workforce, talent management, resourcing. We all like to get paid, so that's an important one to have in there, and health and safety, which is another important one for workforce. So that's sort of trying to describe the business of government. And then underneath that, we have government sectors. So they're the core broad sectors from a government perspective, or I'll call them sectors, that government play in, the areas that government play in: health, natural resources, community, education, justice and safety, disaster and emergency response, economic development, those sort of things. So again, this is a bit of a list that we've sort of synthesized. If we've missed something, apologies, let us know, and we can add that in. So the next element, oops, I did click, but it didn't go through. So simplified sort of strategic planning model. So along the left-hand side, there is basically sort of 4 steps and 4 areas to think of. So it depends on where you want to come into it. So what is our agency's strategic direction? How do we deliver value as an agency? What do we use to deliver that value? And how do we ensure that it grows sustainably? And so within each of those areas, so, the strategic direction stuff, there's a bit of strategic strategy. So, what is our agency's strategic value? And it's around identifying, the business needs, the areas of focus, where as an organization, a particular agency wants to invest, what its portfolio is, how it allocates its resources, and those sort of things. The next layer around how do we deliver value, it's really around not only just the technology side, but it's that enterprise design and operating model. So the business models and operating models that need to exist within an agency to deliver on their strategic direction. So how are we organizing all of that? And that might be, we're delivering a whole heap of stuff, and we make some decisions around how should we configure the technology organization, or how do we configure our business, and what capabilities do we keep within the agencies, and what capabilities can we leverage partners for, and how is that organization structured? The third element is really around we start getting more into the technology space, because that's our core business, but it's around how do we deliver that value? So how do we use our technology to support the business in delivering on those business needs? And how do we arrange our technology service delivery business to support it in the most efficient and effective manner. And that's also around, which components of it do we keep within the walls of the agency, and which components do we use partners to assist us with. And then finally, it's really around the ecosystem, the core technology ecosystem, governance and risk management sort of approach. And how do we deliver the technology initiatives and services? As we start moving to cloud and we have multiple external service providers that we're combining together to actually deliver our technology, how do we manage that and ensure that it's managed in a sustainable manner, and that we can have assurance and manage the risk associated with multiple vendors that are joined together from a service delivery perspective and delivering a system that supports a business service out into the community. So that's where our thinking is at the moment. Again, a work in progress, and certainly looking forward to you guys having a bit of a look-see and a bit of a poke and a prod, and ask some difficult questions that make us think and scratch our heads. I'm sure you will. The next element, you will have seen something that used to look similar to this, but obviously based on the feedback that we've been getting from all of you, we've made some slight adjustments to it and sort of fine-tuned how it looks. So this is really getting now down into our day-to-day business. So at a level 1, the framework itself, what is our agency strategic direction? So that's impacted by strategy, investment from both a government and an agency perspective, the policy and legislation that we need to deliver as agencies, and what do our customers and citizens and community actually need from us or want from us, and that'll all play into that. Where we need to head as individual agencies. Then we start getting into how do we deliver value, and a core to that is obviously our business model, the processes, how we're structured as a business, how we leverage partners within our service delivery model moving forward. Underpinning that becomes, we start talking, okay, so what solutions do we need? What are the insights and information we need to support the delivery? And we then go down into the model that, starting to get into the technology, the sensing enabling field, data and integration, and supporting all of that from ensuring that it grows sustainably is the principles, standards and governance that support those models. Now, this will look a little bit different to TOGAF, but what we are doing as well is ensuring that we're maintaining that alignment. And as I think I said in the very early stages, Lance's view of the world, my personal opinion, TOGAF is a pretty good model. It's a pretty simple model. But really the BI-AT model was developed in a time before a whole bucket load of IoT and mobile technology and that sort of stuff. So whilst it's still valuable, and I'm not discounting it, and most of us know around TOGAF and Zachman, if you're like me back in the day, what we're trying to do is to make this line up so we can show you where it all lines up, but also make it a little bit more contemporary, so that because of the scale and size of the sensing and field technology, particularly in the IoT space, and calling out integration as a really important area and starting to focus, we sort of said, we think there needs to be a little bit more granularity in the TOGAF model. So that's why we've come up with this particular framework. And then we started to outwork some of the level 2. Again, this is a work in progress. I will say, you will notice in this particular diagram, some of them sort of radiate out from the center and some of them have a bit of a linear join. That was just us trying to be clever and make it look pretty. It doesn't actually have any meaning, so we're going to go back and have a look at that. We'll call it a little bit of a Pokemon diagram. We were trying to be too clever there, obviously, but anyway, it seems to work. But you can see, the important thing is that each of the I'm pointing to my screen, which is not going to help. Each of the level 1 elements are outworked a bit further. And Scott, I've got a question there. Go.
Yeah, thanks, Lance. Just looking at that model in the previous slide on the one on the left there, and you've got for business, and then in the previous a few of the slides back, you mentioned that business modelling was an important bit of feedback, and I'm just it's one of the domains in TOGAF as well. And I'm just wondering, have we missed that in this one at all? I get the point about the technology coming through with IoT and whatnot, but I'm just wondering if we have. I'm missing it from this. I just wonder if you can explain where that might fit in.
So the business modelling, where we've tried to put that in is in this business and partners. So it really is looking at the services, processes, capabilities, the business models, the operating models, how we structure the organisation, and the processes associated with that within here. So if that hasn't come through quite as clear, then thank you for the feedback, and we'll have a look at how we might be able to call that out. Or if you've got some suggestions, Scott, really appreciate how we might be able to make that a little bit more. We should be able to look at that and go, oh yeah, that's where that fits. That's what I'm hoping for. So yeah, more than happy with the feedback, but that's sort of where I had, where we'd sort of allocated it.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks for the question. Okie dokie. So we'll just move on to this one. So don't have really too much else to say there. And as far as how we, so this is really draft. So how we think we might present some of the information at a high level. So this isn't necessarily all the detail with the policies, but actually having a look at the framework is, contextually, this is where the framework elements sit. So strategy and investment, what you use it for, who are the core actors within this particular element, what the sub-elements are, and what they are made up of, and then looking at the QGEA and the guidance. So it's sort of like that navigation pane. The direction, is there, whole of government strategic direction in this particular space? What sort of content we have in there. Yes, we're heading in this particular direction. This is what we'd like to see at the end of it, the North Star. Are there whole of government policies associated with that particular strategic element or sub-element? So we may go, we don't, most of this particular stuff, agencies, go for your life, fill your boots, do whichever way that you feel comfortable with and works for your agency. But there might be one element we go, but in this particular space, and particularly, that's a good one in here, we've got projects. In this particular space, whole of government policy, thou shalt use Prince 2 as the base method for governance of ICT projects. So that's sort of how we're looking at that. And then from support, how do we support you folk on a day-to-day basis? So what we'll do in here is we'll go, okay, so there are these industry frameworks that we'd like agencies to utilize moving forward, or in some cases we may go Prince 2. This one is a whole of government mandate that everyone needs to use from an industry frameworks. We may have some Queensland government artifacts. So if we come up with classification frameworks or that sort of stuff, where we go, okay, here's the artifact from a Queensland government perspective. This is what we need it to look and feel like. And so that, that might be, how we're prioritizing. We've got anything like the strategic planning toolkit from DPC for agencies. So, it may not necessarily even be technical. It could be from other agencies. When we're doing websites and those sort of things with the disability service standards, and we've got some obligations from agencies there. And then we've got some whole of government collaboration area, and that's really, some other things, case studies, people that have, got some really good reference artifacts that, here's someone that's done it really well, may not be in our jurisdiction, could be in other jurisdictions, where we can point you folks to some valuable resources that might assist you as you work through this particular element and this particular space. How this is going to look in practice and how we're going to deliver this is a sort of part of that element of putting the meat on the bone. Certainly we'll have a physical document type framework at initially. Ultimately, from my perspective, I'd like to see this certainly in some sort of web easy accessible style, so that I don't need a cottage industry to maintain a physical document, because that wouldn't make much sense at all. So, but we're still working on that, and certainly if you folk have got any ideas, a lot of the stuff in the, if we have reference architectures and that sort of stuff, I'm certainly looking at having a central capability of an architectural solution, iServer or LeanIX or one of those, where we can actually have some artifacts that people hopefully will be able to suck out and paste into your own areas or that sort of stuff, make it easy for people. So that's sort of where our thoughts are at the moment. Hopefully we haven't missed anything that will be useful, but if we have, yell out. Let us know if you can't see something there. That'd be really great to be able to help you navigate the wilderness that is. Dale, yeah, question.
Yeah, just an observation. Legislation seems missing from this framework in some regard. Where would legislation fit into those elements on the right there? Is it strategic direction, policy, artifacts?
So this could end in tears, Dale, because I'm going to jump back a couple of slides because I think I've got an answer, okay. But I could fail dismally. So let's just see if I have or I haven't.
It's just that, for most of the departments, legislation drives everything they do. For example, the Planning Act will drive state development, etc.
Cool. Okay. Luckily, I did read
thanks for that.
before I came in. So what we've got is we do actually have a legislation and policy tile. So
cool.
So what you'll see is that there'll be one exactly like this, but it'll be for legislation and policy, some sub elements and that sort of stuff. So yeah, great call out, and I appreciate the question. And thankfully, we had
it's a chicken and egg thing, because they create the legislation which drives our policy, but our policies can drive the legislation as well.
Yes. And I'll leave that to the policy people to try and sort that little conundrum out. But no, thank you very much for the question. That was a great question. Julie.
Oh, hi, Lance. I'm just wondering, you were mentioning iServer and the other tools that are out there for EA. Is there any intention to go back to a whole of government tool like we used to have a few years, well, probably many years ago now, where it was good to see the different information across departments, what agencies were using, and where you could share though and reuse?
That's I'm going to answer that very delicately. Julie, how's that? I think there is value in us having a repository of the core elements from a whole of government perspective. So yes, I think should that be mandated that everyone has to use that particular solution? At this stage, I'm going to say I haven't seen a necessary case to drive that if we can have a central repository that people can sort of extract some of the data out. So where my head is at with that sort of thing is trying to have a repository that I can store a lot of the core information, and if there's some commonality there, and particularly if there's a number of in our discussions, there was a number of smaller agencies that sort of really couldn't justify a solution in their own right. So there is an opportunity. I won't commit myself just yet because I don't know if I've got any money, but there may be an opportunity there to have a solution that agencies can avail themselves of. And I think by natural attrition, we will get to maybe 1 or 2 core systems across agencies that we use. What I'm really focused on is, can I extract the data from the systems that we have and share that data, if that's in the back end of those solutions? And I suppose that's where it becomes really important that we've got very clear metadata and taxonomies for how we name things within those various elements. So I probably didn't really answer your question directly, apart from at this stage, I'm not intending to suggest we should have one whole of government solution, unless I get everyone in the architecture world in government say, no, that's a really good idea, we really do want one. Then I'm happy to facilitate that outcome on behalf of everyone. But I'm reluctant, because I know just from experience, some of the products work very well for some agencies, but not so well for others, because they just don't have the resources, because they're quite complex, and some agencies have limited resources, and they need some of the solutions that are a little bit less detailed and resource intensive than others. So yeah, I don't know.
Thanks, Lance. And it's probably another angle to look at too, that those resources that are within agencies, how can they be utilised as well?
100%, and that's certainly something we want to leverage quite strongly, if possible, as we start putting the meat on the bones of the framework. Is I don't for one second think that I've got, 1, enough resources, or 2, the experience within the limited team that I have to be able to put a lot of the meat on some of these sub-elements within here. So I'm going to be looking for people to assist and provide input, and maybe take an element and outwork it for everyone, if that floats people's, they go, oh, I really want to do that one, because that's something I really enjoy, and it's really relevant to our department. Excellent. More than happy to support you in whatever way I can to do that, and then we'll pull it back into the whole of government framework. So
sounds good.
Thanks for your question, Julie. Sorry I couldn't sort of be a little bit more specific there, but it's something we're thinking of, but yeah, I don't not going to make any mandates just yet. Cool. No more questions just at the moment. So the next element, this is a really, really busy slide. And basically this is, and the detail within here is not, I'm not suggesting that it is done, dusted, or in any way, shape or form 100%, but it is indicative of what we're hoping to do to produce that sort of North Star of, the whole of government framework, and where we're heading from a North Star perspective. You would have all seen these documents before, and pictures before. So who are our customers that we deal with, the channels and touch points. We've got the government functions there, and underneath the government functions, we've called out the digital government trends that we're seeing both nationally and internationally within that space. So in the service delivery space, what we're seeing from a digital government perspective is, there's a move and a trend towards a government of one, and no touch government. So, basically getting out of people's way and allowing them to get on with their lives. And we're sort of in the background, and our systems and the way we support them is unobtrusive. In operations, cognitive automation, policy and decision making, AI-based scenario analysis. So when we start writing policies and all the rest of it, we run it through an AI machine and go, oh, okay, so in this scenario, what would that policy do, and what would it result in, either economically or socially, or those sort of things. So that's trying to call out some of those trends in that area. We've obviously got the sectors. In this section here with common solutions, there's a number of solutions, and these are the solutions that people have sort of called out in our discussions. Oh, wouldn't it be great if we had, we all did procurement the same. If we had a case management solution that we could use across government, that's not to say that there is one of them to rule them all. It is to say that there are maybe one, maybe three payroll solutions that we use across agencies for Queensland government, but there's not a dozen of them. Although we might have, and I just saw a spelling mistake, but digital identity. Yeah, okay, so we're probably going to have one Queensland government digital identity, whilst we may allow customers to use whichever one that they choose. So that's what that's designed to do, and show, where we're trying to target, and also give a bit of a North Star and go, you know what, we're going after this one. So this one we're looking at, we've got in place. This one we're looking at in the next sort of 2 to 5 years. These ones we're looking at planning for in the future. Common data elements. So we, and I won't apologise for it, flogged it from the federal government. So core areas across government and those data areas. So routine admin data, we need to be able to share that. Statistical and reference data, emergency and recovery response data, citizen and customer data, and any of those interagency agreement areas. And things like child safety is a key one that certainly springs to mind, where we've got interagency agreements where, because of a specific business requirement, we do have interagency agreements to share data for the benefit, for social benefit, and helping our customers and citizens in the services we deliver. Underneath that, we break out our sensing and field technology and our enabling technologies, and where we've got some common, storage, enterprise compute, all of those sort of things. So what are the elements? And obviously there's detail underneath this. And then the government tech trends. So, what are the, and we're starting to talk about now, how do we keep across the changing, emerging technology trends for government? And how do we provide some broad guidance so that if people are playing in or want to play in quantum computing or blockchain or those sort of things, how can we support agencies with case studies, who's doing it really well overseas, traps for young players, just be careful of these sort of things. And then where we may step in from a whole of government perspective and go, you know what, we want to run some proof of concepts in these particular areas, who's interested, what are we doing in those areas, so that everyone can see what's happening and participate if they so desire. Or agencies can go, hey, there's 3 or 4 of us, and we think we'd like to run a particular proof of concept in this emerging technology area, and how can we support you do that? Around the outside, our priorities and design principles for the enterprise architecture framework. We are currently internally working on the governance frameworks for the digital economy strategy, and of which we're a key pillar and a part. And then the frameworks and standards that help support and manage this environment and ecosystem. So a lot on this. There is, obviously going to be a little bit more detail underneath, but on a page, it's sort of hoping to present a picture of, it's a coordinated framework all the way from our customers through our functions, with all of the key elements, and where we're playing from a whole of government perspective, where we're starting to align or where we want to align, so that we can help you in your agency planning as well. So next steps. Over the next couple of weeks, we're continuing to define that framework and the future state blueprint based on feedback. We'll make sure the slides go up into the chat as well, so you can have a look at it and provide any feedback, and certainly if we've missed something, call it out. We're developing the remaining components of the ecosystem. So you've seen some of them there. So we've still got some work to do on others. And based on the feedback, some of those changed yesterday. So we are changing. We are certainly listening, and it's very, very fluid at the moment, which is great. I think we're going to get something that's going to be usable for all of us. And then we're going to continue to test some updated thinking on that QGEA with a few individuals and sort of go, well, okay, if we did this, what sort of impact would that have on an agency? Looking at your architectural approach, does that fit? Does it not fit? What sort of problems can you see with us heading down this sort of track? Does it make sense? And those sort of things. So that's where we're heading at the moment. As I said, we're trying to be all things to all people, which is going to be reasonably difficult, but it is a framework. So what we're hoping to do is within that framework, depending upon where you are and your level of maturity, hopefully you've seen something today that go, yep, okay, that's good. I could use that. I could really use that today, and I could use that component. I'm not for one second thinking that everyone's going to, drop everything that we do and we're just going to follow this blindly and do that. It's not designed to do that. It's designed to support you where you are at the moment and help you move your organisations forward. And that's all I had today for the showcase, folks. So happy to take any questions if people had. I appreciate the questions we've had through that as well. Also happy if people think that we're, on the right track, not on the right track, or if we've hit the mark, yay. If we haven't, please let us know. Angela.
Hi, Lance. Thank you. I find these very informative every fortnight, so thank you for doing this. I just have a quick question about, is there any transparency as to who you might have met with in terms of a practitioner level during your interviews or anything? I'm just curious to know in your own Queensland Health, who you might have met with, any transparency like that, just so we get an idea, that kind of stuff?
Yes. Certainly, we can put the list of, I'll put up the list of the people that we had spoken with. So we spoke, most of the discussions that we've had have been driven through the CIO committee. Sure. So the QGDLG group, we asked that group to provide nominations, and wherever we could. Some individuals, I will say, we weren't able to fit in, only because we were running pretty fast, and we just, cognizant that you all have day jobs.
Yes, I understand that.
So, but yeah, happy to put that up as well. So yeah, I'll get the team to do that. No worries.
Thanks, Lance.
And glad that they're providing the sessions are providing some benefit. Sarah.
Thanks, Lance. I completely agree that these showcases are excellent. 2 points or questions, comments. You talked about agencies helping to put some flesh on these things. Mm-hmm. What about running some sprints and we give you a person for 2 weeks as a way to try and sort of solve some of that and accelerate how we can put the flesh on, or the meat on the bones?
That's a very good idea.
I think those short, sharp sprints where we can, we'll give you somebody for 2 weeks, they can go completely offline. I'm sure we could all afford to do that. It's not like giving someone up for 3 months. And my second comment is, are we able to, or do you mind if we see this as being recorded, take this recording and replay our session in our agencies?
I don't mind these recordings being replayed in agencies.
I think there's some really good stuff in here that would be useful for a broader audience to know about. Yep. So oftentimes we do all this fabulous work and it's not visible because, everybody's busy, blah, blah, blah. But this is a really good summary of not just what you've been doing, but the context and the why and all that. So it would be great, I think, if we could run a session inside our agency, and I'm happy just to play the recording rather than take an hour out of your diary.
Yeah, no, happy to do that. We had a little bit of problems trying to get the recordings out, but we'll look to put them somewhere where people can access access them, and we'll let everyone know. I'll send an email out to this group as to where you can get hold of it. I will apologise to our SciTech folk, because if people start downloading great gobs of this and we all do it at once, it's going to send the lights and the measuring stuff all over the place. But we'll make those available.
Thank you.
It's Mark here. It's probably worth just pointing out that it's all still draft. So let's not get into political wars about the content. Thus far, it's draft and for consultation. So if people feel aggrieved that they're not represented, it's not because we didn't include them.
And we've you will note there's draft for discussion all over the place. So as long as people just understand that when you do show it, in the spirit of everything so far, we're happy to take feedback and all the rest of it, and we're not here to push any particular barrows. So
I think
happy
that's
to
a really
take
good
feedback.
point. We love that you're working in the open and you're being transparent about this, so we can't sort of criticise that.
Appreciate it. Cool. Any other questions? Do you think we're starting to hit the mark, Nicole?
Hey, Lance. It's really good showcase. Just for your reference, there's a whole bunch of commentary in the chat. So afterwards, you probably want to catch up with those. I'm not sure if anyone had a specific question in the chat they'd like you to answer.
Sorry, folks, I didn't have my chat window up. Let's have a look. Okay, Margaret, thank you. Communities, families, disability. We'll just have a look at that, and infrastructure, water, power, and that sort of stuff. Yes, I'll double check. I won't attempt to try and do what I did before, because I'm not quite there yet. Marketecture, yes, definitely. I'm a big believer in marketecture, James. We've got to win the propaganda war with our business people. So if we can get them to understand the value from some glossy pieces of paper, then that gets us a seat at the table to actually have the real discussions. So, and is it human services category? Thanks, Darren. Yes, we'll have a look at that. Thank you, Chris. Intention to adopt Australian government DTA EA frameworks. We've certainly had a look at those, Marianne. My understanding just at the moment with the Australian government stuff was they did do some work that was draft, but I hadn't, they were looking at reviewing a lot of that sort of stuff, but it has been in part of our review is certainly looking at the DTA and leveraging that, and you will see, particularly in the one I called out was the data area, where we've taken, that Commonwealth framework and gone, well, okay, those guys have already done it in the spirit of reuse. Don't see why we need to have anything different there. So yes, we are looking at it, and where appropriate, we'll drop that in. If there's anything specific that you think we've missed or could leverage, by all means, shoot that through, and we'll have a more detailed look at that and how we can incorporate it. Thank you. Yeah, Sean, that's a good question around the whole of government EA tool, and I don't know, I wasn't here. And there's a lot of discussion around a tool, so that's good. Looks like we'll something that we need some more discussion on. Will QGEA CDG continue to pay for whole of government access to industry frameworks if payment is required, AXELOS and more? At this particular point in time, Margaret, that is the intention, yes. So that's us paying for, things like AXELOS and those sort of things for the benefit of all. we do that. Some of you may know, some of you may not know. We also pay or coordinate. We don't actually pay. I'll rephrase that. We coordinate all of the stuff for APRA and all that sort of thing as well. So we do some work in that space in other areas. Digital first strategy is mentioned often in this work. Yes, so Colin, the digital first strategy will be replaced with the digital economy strategy when that is approved and endorsed by Cabinet, which is hopefully, I think, very, very soon. And in the background, we've sort of been looking at anything that we may or may not have to change as a result. But at the moment, because digital first strategy is the strategy that is sort of in play, so to speak, and not Cabinet and confidence, we've used that a bit. So, but as soon as the other one comes out, we'll be doing some minor adjustments, I think, to where we go. And yes, we're crowdsourcing the building out to you folk as much as we can, because you're the brains of the operations. Legislation as code related to a business rules engine. I would love to have a business rules engine in place. I think legislation as code is maybe is aligned, but may, depending upon what school of thought you came from, it might be a bit different. But yes, I'd love to have a business rules engine. I think that would make our platform plays for agencies much simpler. Consistent wording, yep. Civil service or public service, yep. Good point, Alex. Chatbots and similar, thank you, David. We'll have a look at that and make sure we've got that covered in a home. Yep, the draft be available. That's a good question, Sean. We'd like to get that out soon. There's probably a few things that we just want to run up a flagpole internally and give ourselves a hard time first before we shoot it out and let everyone else give
Thanks, Lance. I think you already answered that question earlier.
Cool, no worries. But yeah, it is. And look, a lot of this sort of stuff, we also want to use the existing governance processes and consultation processes as well. Maybe shortcut a few of them, but and make, if there's no vehement objections, then let's get it approved as a, version 1.0. And yes, we'll make the recording available. Who's the yes and key champion for the business area of area of government? Margaret, that as far as the roles, that's one of the areas that we do have to do some more work on, and identifying who is the key champion for that sort of thing, and also champions for some of the, or owners for some of the policies. Making sure that we've got appropriate owners that have a stake in the game from a QGEA perspective. I probably shouldn't own a whole heck of a lot apart from the framework and how we work together. There are subject matter experts in government that should own policies and particular areas that sort of go, okay, this is from a whole of government perspective, and it's a good suggestion. And yes, Sean, certainly. And I think I've been pretty clear and open in the discussions. None of this is fait accompli. But we do need to acknowledge we do need to manage the perception that it's not a fait accompli and it is a work in progress. So I'll take that on advisement and look at when we can, when we'll be in a state to release at least a version for people to poke and prod that's complete enough. Cool. I'll go through some more of the detail in that. That's sort of in a quick look. Most of the questions I saw. So yeah, if there's nothing else, I don't have too much else to to play back. So hopefully, as I said, you found something in there. Thank you for the feedback. I will continue to do these sessions and show you where we're up to, and we'll go back through the comments and make sure that we can pick a time, and then we'll give you a bit of a heads up as to when we're looking at sending it out, so you can be ready and have some spare time available in your busy days to give it a good crack and a good look at and some feedback. Thanks very much, folks. Have a great rest of the week for it.
Thanks, Lance.